Hi guys, welcome to Meeple's People Circus. I'm back with Jess and Darius, and we are going to be playing a bit of Wingspan. Jess is going to explain the rules, so I will let her get on.
I will try my best. Okay, so this is Wingspan. This is relatively new, hot off the press, and it is one of my favourite games. Very hot. So I'll quickly go through the rules and then we'll dive straight into it. So basically, Wingspan is a game about birds. Yay! Great theme. So we've all got our own boards, and we've got a bird feeder, which has got food in it. And basically the game is about placing birds, doing actions, laying some eggs, and they look like eggs that you probably want to eat. And then it's a massive point salad at the end. So the way the game works is we each take turns in doing an action, and then at the end of the round we'll score points, and there's 4 rounds in the game, and at the end of the 4th round it's whoever has the most points wins. So the way that the game's set up is that we start with 5 bird cards each. So a bird card has got loads of different things on it. So at the top it will say what habitat it can go in. So on your board you'll see the top part of the habitat is green, the forest. The middle part is, what are we calling it?
Grassland.
Grassland. And the bottom is water. So the bird will be able to, some birds might only be able to go in water like this one, or you might have a bird that can go in grassland and water, or there are some that can go in all of them. So depending on where the birds can go is where you're going to place them. So at the beginning of the game we have 5 bird cards in hand. We also start with resources. There are 5 different types of resources. So you've got fish, worms, berries, wheat and mice. If you keep 3 bird cards you have to get rid of 3 resources. If I kept all of my bird cards I would have to get rid of all of my starting resources. But if I didn't want to keep any of my bird cards I would keep all of my resources. Sometimes I sort of keep 2 and get rid of 2 resources, so I've got some resources and some cards, but it obviously works differently for everyone. So we'll probably all currently choose which bird cards we want to keep.
To notice well, you get them at the same time as your goal cards, so you can sort of liaise with what your goals are to really give you a bit of a start off.
Yeah. So the goal cards that you have, you only keep 1 of them. So the 2 that I've got is I've got birds that eat fish. So any birds that have got a fish symbol, I'm going to get points for at the end of the game. So if I've got 2 or 3 birds that eat fish, I'll get 3 points. Or if I have 4 or more birds that eat fish, I'll get 8. So it might be likely for me to keep birds that have got ones that eat fish, which I don't. So it's probably not going to be a one that I'll start with. Now the other one says birds with that particular type of nest. So on the bird cards themselves, not only do you have where they go in their habitat, you have the cost to play the bird. So for instance this one would be a worm, this one would be a worm or a wheat because there's a slash, or that would be a worm and a wheat because there's a plus. So the actual goal card here is birds must have a specific type of nest. So underneath the points, which is where the feather is on the card, so this bird is worth 1 point, you've got its nest value. So the star can count as any nest value, but you'll notice my other ones have got like a tree looking nest, a twig looking nest, and a
Floor
cluster sort of nest.
Yeah.
I don't know the actual words for these nests, but they're all symbol based, which is quite easy to follow. So my second goal card is birds with that particular nest type, which I've got a bird of that nest type, and actually I've got 2 stars here, so they can all count towards that, so it's likely to be the goal that I'll end up picking for this game. So I'll keep that in play, and it's technically face down so nobody else knows, but we'll just keep it there like that.
We haven't heard.
They've not heard anything. So to make it easier for you to work out which cards that you want to keep for your goal, it will tell you at the bottom the percentage of cards that have that particular benefit on it. So this one is 31% of cards will have this particular nest, whereas birds that eat fish is only 18%. So I'm more likely to get this one completed than I am that one. But obviously this one would offer more cards if you did manage to do it, so it helps you choose which one you want to keep. So I'm going to keep that one, get rid of that, and now I'm just going to choose what birds I want to keep. So it's likely that I'm going to want to keep, I'll keep these 3 because they're part of my goal, so I'll discard those. And because I've kept 3 cards, I'm now going to get rid of 3 resources. So I'm going to get rid of ones that I don't need. So I'm going to get rid of a fish, a berry, and a rat. So the way that the game plays is you've got actions that are labelled down the side. So you've got play a bird, gain food, lay eggs, and draw bird cards. So the actual actions in the game are quite simple. The play a bird card simply means that you pay the resource cost, which is labelled on the card. So if this were my go, I would play a worm and a wheat in order to place that. Now I can place this one, this particular one can go in any habitat, so for argument's sake I could place it there. I would pay those 2 resources into the supply, and that would be my turn. If you want to place birds in the first column, it's absolutely free apart from the cost that you pay. But if you place birds in these columns, not only do you pay the resources on the birds, but you have to pay an egg. And if you go all the way down here, you have to start paying 2 eggs in order to place birds. So when you start getting further on in the game, you need to be sure you have some kind of egg supply before you can play more bird cards. That's one of the most simple actions. It's important to remember that any 2 resources can go into any one. So if I really don't have any berries, I can spend 2 of anything to act as a berry, so it makes the game a little bit easier. After that, these 3 actions, you'll always do the action of the leftmost that you can see visible. So if this bird was in play, I would do this action, which means take 1 bird food from the feeder. So, for instance, if I wanted a worm, I would take a worm out of the bird feeder and I'd give myself a worm into my personal supply. Once you've done the action that's on the leftmost, you always then move along until you get to the end. So as you get further up, you get further benefits. So that's take 1 from the bird feeder, that's take 1 from the bird feeder and get an extra from the bird feeder if you have a card to discard. So I could discard that from hand and get an extra 1 from the bird feeder. And obviously the further up this goes, you can take 2 from the bird feeder, you can take 3 from the bird feeder. So depending on which way you want to play the game, you're going to get more benefits. Now these actions are just mirrored for the eggs and the cards. So down here it would simply be take 2 eggs and place it on a bird. The most important thing to remember about placing eggs is that you are restricted. This particular bird is allowed to have 5 eggs placed onto it. So once you've placed 5 eggs, you can't place any more. So be sure that you've got birds that actually have supply before you do the egg action. Again, the further you get up, the more eggs you'll be able to place. And if you ever have these showing, you can spend resources from your personal supply to put extra eggs out.
It's 1 resource for 1 egg.
Yeah, 1 resource for 1 egg, yeah. So once you've got this bottom action, it allows you to take more cards, and it works in exactly the same way. You draw a card, which is either from the ones that are face up or from randomly, and again you can take a card if this was placed, and you could exchange an egg to get a second card, which again could either be random or from the top. So it's a multiple of taking cards, placing birds, getting food to place those birds, and getting eggs. And that's basically the circle of life with the Wingspan. So get resources, get bird cards, pay the resources to play the birds, and then lay eggs on them. Because at the end of the game there are loads of different things that cause you to have points. So at the end of the game you're going to get points for birds, and on each of the cards you'll show there's a little feather around the amount of points that's worth at the end of the game. You're going to get points based on your bonus card, so in this instance I'm looking to get birds with that type of nest. End of round goals, which are here, so at the end of each round we're going to get points depending on what we've managed to do in that round. So at the moment in this game we're getting points for eggs in bowl nests, so I don't have one with a bowl nest, but
I don't.
you know,
Neither do I.
so nobody has that, so this is going well. But I could use a star for example, or this bird has a bowl nest. So if that was placed there and I had 2 eggs on it, at the end of the round I would go up to 2, and that would be the points that I would get at the end of the game. The next round is birds in the grassland area. So if I had 4 birds in the grassland area, I'd get 4. The next one is slightly different from the beginning. This is birds with a cluster nest that has an egg on it. So the difference between the two is this bird can hold 2 eggs and it has a bowl nest. So if I have 2 eggs on there, I'll get 2 points. However, the difference between this one and this one is that if I have a bird with a cluster nest and I have 1 egg on it, that will get me a point. However, in order to get another point, I would need another bird, a completely new bird with a cluster nest with an egg on it in order to get 2. So for instance, I could use this wild one. So that's the difference between eggs in that nest, which you can do multiples on the same bird, or you have to have separate birds with that nest type with at least 1 egg on it. And then the last one is eggs in the forest. So it doesn't matter what bird it's on, I could have 7 eggs along here and then I'd be able to go up to the maximum of 5 points. So they're the things that we're going to be looking at depending on what birds we want to place, what birds we're going to place with specific nest types, and that's where it gets a little bit thinking ahead of your turn as much as you can. I think that is pretty much everything, and we might be able to start.